Hi, this is Mathias Engelmann at Carolina Raptor Center. Today we're going to talk about biofacts. So what are biofacts? So Kristen will pan over here, we'll show you some examples. Biofacts are what we call the wings, tails, and feet of raptors and skulls. These are really cool tools that we can use in our educational programs. And some of these, in fact, we can also give to schools with the right permits and nature centers. So these allow you to get a really up close and personal look at the raptors that we have here. So where do biofacts come from? So unfortunately, that's part of the sad story of rehabilitation. Some of our patients don't make it. Imagine a 2-pound owl hitting a 3,000-pound car. It's amazing that any of them really survive, but some of our patients just simply are so injured that they don't live through that initial trauma, or we may have to put them humanely to sleep because we know they will never be able to walk or fly or do any of the normal things again. So it's a little bit sad, but on the other side, we can still make use of these parts. For instance, we send lots of whole bodies to the vet school in Raleigh because there are students who are learning how to do examinations, for instance, on cats and dogs, but they rarely get a chance to work on birds, specifically raptors. So this gives them a really good experience. They can learn how to examine a bird, how to put bandages on, where to collect blood samples, all kinds of things they need to know as veterinarians that they really don't get to study during the normal courses during 4 years of vet school. So our deceased patients can still be of great use to us. We can learn a lot from them. So let's talk about, for instance, some of the adaptations we see here. Here's an interesting foot. So does everybody know what an osprey is? Also called a fish hawk sometimes. So this is the foot of a deceased osprey here, and notice the talons are curved almost half moon shaped, like a full 180-degree circle. That's pretty amazing. And the feet are very rough. There are these spicules or rough places all over. So that makes sense. If you're going to catch fish for a living, you better be able to hold on to really slippery prey. So these, this is a set of 2 really efficient fish hooks, so to speak. And these are really amazing to watch in the wild. And this is no guarantee they'll catch a fish every time, but they certainly increase their chances by having these really rough feet. We can learn other things from their feathers, for instance. Here, for instance, if you don't ever see an adult red-shouldered hawk and an adult broad-winged hawk perched side by side, which would be pretty rare to do, here's the difference. Here's how you can identify them in the field if you're bird watching or if you're watching during hawk migration. The broad-winged hawk has, as an adult, a really wide white band and alternating with dark ones. The red-shouldered has narrow white bands. So they look pretty similar at first glance, but if you look at them closely, you'll notice a pretty significant difference. So you can see this difference even from hundreds of feet away, a bird soaring overhead. And you get a pretty good idea of what species this might be if you see nothing else.
And there's a significant size difference too, isn't
There's
there?
a size difference too, right? But that might be harder to gauge when they're way up in the sky. Of course, with our patients, obviously we have them in our hands and we can gauge. We can also weigh them, so there are differences in their weights. But that's an easy feature. And this, of course, is only adults. The juveniles look different. In fact, the juveniles look a little bit more like this tail. Both broad-winged and red-shouldered and red-tailed hawks have these kind of generic brown striped tails. They all look very similar as juveniles. So that means for their first year of life, they have this brown tail. And then in their second year, their second summer, so to speak, they will molt into an adult tail, red-shouldered, broad-winged, or red-tailed hawk. And that's obviously a striking difference.
So how do you do this? So once you have a patient that didn't make it, how do we get these?
Yeah, so it's actually pretty simple. There's nothing really fancy about it. We just dissect out the parts that we want and we air dry them. And of course we have to keep bugs away. And we want to dry them in a certain shape so the tail doesn't automatically fan out like this. So we have to pin them down for a couple of weeks and let them dry and make sure nothing starts eating them. And then that's all we do. We don't treat them with any chemicals or anything like that. They can last a good long time, but eventually they will get brittle and break up. So we'll have to replace them. But these make excellent educational tools. We also have skulls. People get pretty excited about skulls. So here, for instance, the skull of an osprey. And notice again, it has a nice fish hook looking beak to it. And if you've studied skulls and eyes, you may have learned something about eye rings. So the eyes in birds are generally large enough to where they need some extra support. These are the eye rings of an osprey. They're actually fairly small, and they're not glued in place because there's not a good place to hold them in place. But the eyes are so large that they need some bony support called sclerotic ossicles or sclerotic ring. In the owls, which have typically, some of our owls anyway have really large eyes, the eye rings become much larger. So large that they actually fit nicely in the socket and we can glue them back in place. So this is an eastern screech owl. It's an adult, full size. And you notice how big those eye rings are.
So why are their eyes so big?
So their eyes are large because they are adapted to collect as much light as possible. You know, remember that most owl species around here are nocturnal or crepuscular, meaning either they hunt at night or they hunt during the dawn and dusk hours. And there's little light available, so the more light you can collect into your eyes, the better the chance that you see your prey item or a tree or a car going down the road. So they have large eyes, which means they have more photoreceptors in each eye. You can collect light, and that means they can see as well as we can in daytime. They can see just as well at very low light levels, like a sliver of a moon. They have to have some light, so it can't be a completely dark night. But they can operate under very little light. So these are pretty cool. And these, in case you're wondering, so you can't just lay a skull out there and it's going to dry out and look like this. There's actually some work involved, but thank God we don't have to do the work. We actually have a colony of beetles. Let me bring these over here. A colony of beetles, they're called dermestid beetles. Or if you like, you can call them flesh-eating beetles. There they are. They're hiding. So you see whole beetles and the larva. And they will take a mouse like this and turn it into a skeleton in 3 days.
Wow.
It's pretty wild. So that's what we do with the skulls, for instance, or if we need a wing bone.
So the beetles will eat off all of the hair and the flesh and everything?
Yes.
Wow.
There'll be, like you can see here, there's feathers left, some hair.
So, do you take care of, are these your pets?
Yeah, right. I don't think they make good pets. You gotta really watch out where you turn them loose. Here's another example of what they do. So this is the wing bone of a bird called a humerus. So just like in our upper arm, they have an upper wing bone, and it was cleaned by the beetles. And then we went a step further and cut this one in half so you can see the internal structure of this bone. Notice how it's built like an airplane almost. It has internal struts. So this makes the bones very sturdy, but also very lightweight. And that's important for a bird. In order to be able to fly, they couldn't have the same kind of bones that we have. Our bones are heavy. They have thick walls, and some of them are filled solid. They have to be as lightweight as possible.
So it's almost like a straw.
It is almost like a straw. In fact, this bone in the real live bird is filled with air. It's part of the respiratory system. It acts as like a storage compartment, like an air sac almost. So we have to be careful when we give injections, for instance. There are some injections called intraosseous, meaning into the bone. They can't go in a bone like the humerus, which is connected to the respiratory system. You could drown a bird by giving them fluids in the wrong bone.
So I have a question. Where do you get beetles like that?
These beetles you would have to buy from a supplier like Carolina Biological Supply Company, or I'm sure there are others. And you just, I assume anybody could buy them. I'm not sure. I don't think there are any regulations about that. And they require relatively minimal care, but you just don't want them to escape.
Yeah.
Do not want them running around loose in your house or anywhere else.
We have another question. If someone were to witness a raptor get hit or die, would it be beneficial to notify us or the vet school? They're in Raleigh.
Yes. Right, so we certainly would like to know if it's anywhere near us, especially if the bird is banded. So look on its legs to see it has a silver band on one of its legs, because that means it was either a bird that we released with an U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service band on, or a researcher somewhere in the United States released, and he'd want to know what happened to it. So we definitely want the information. We may want the whole body if it's fresh enough, and again, we can use it for certain activities, educational uses. The vet school directly may not want it. They usually get it in bulk from places like us. But you could call, for instance, a local nature center, a park, anybody that has permits to display birds like this. They may be able to take these deceased birds and use them for educational use.
Do we let visitors touch our birds, or do we as staff touch our birds?
We don't, unfortunately, for various reasons. We can't let visitors touch. Number one, it would be kind of a safety issue. These birds do not like to be touched in general, but we also transfer oils from our fingers to their feathers, and that can be detrimental. So for various reasons, we let visitors touch feathers like these. It's much better on the birds, and you can get up close and personal, no stress, no danger of getting taloned in the process. Excuse me. Any other questions?
Yeah, I don't think so.
You think so? Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, that's it for BioFacts today.
Thanks
for
so much,
listening.
Mathias. We'll see you